poor young nurse helped a fainting old woman, not knowing she was the billionaire CEO's mother. Snow drifted gently over the streets of Manhattan, coating the sidewalks in a thin, melting layer of white. The morning was cold and wet, the kind of winter day that made people hunch into their scarves and walk faster without looking up. The city pulsed as it always did, relentless and indifferent. Hannah moved against the tide. At 26, she had learned to navigate New York with quiet resilience. After 12 hours on the night shift at Street, Luke's hospital, she should have been exhausted, and she was, but she did not rush. Her breath left visible trails in the cold air, her steps steady but slow, as if giving the world one last look before going home. She wore a pale cream coat, a little frayed at the cuffs, over her navy blue nurse scrubs. Her blonde hair, soft and straight, was pulled into a high ponytail, tied neatly with a white ribbon. The ribbon had started to fray too, but she kept it anyway. She liked order, she liked care, she liked knowing she was useful. Outside a bakery, she stopped. A handwritten sign in the window advertised day-old croissants at half price. She smiled faintly and stepped forward. That was when the woman in front of her collapsed. There was a sharp cry, a rustle of movement, and then a body crumpled onto the cold concrete. People around her gasped and stepped back, instinctively forming a loose circle. Some fumbled for their phones, others just stood frozen. Hannah dropped her coffee. It spilled across the sidewalk, but she did not notice. She was already kneeling beside the woman. Mid-60s, well-dressed graying hair swept into a careful twist. Her skin was pale, lips tinged blue. She was unconscious. Her breathing was shallow. "Ma'am?" Hannah said quickly. No response. Her fingers went to the woman's neck, found a pulse, faint and slow. Hannah moved with precision. She gently laid the woman flat on her back, loosened the silk scarf at her throat, and removed her own coat to place under the woman's head. She tilted her chin to open the airway, checking her pupils. No trauma, just weakness. Possibly cardiac, maybe diabetic. She needed a hospital. Hannah pulled out her phone and called 911, rattling off the location, symptoms, and her medical observations like a seasoned professional. Her voice remained calm, her hands steady. Then she opened the woman's purse, scanning quickly for identification. Inside was a small leather wallet, and tucked neatly in one slot, a laminated card. Sarah Carrington. Next to it was a folded paper with an emergency contact. Ethan, son. She dialed the number. "Hello?" A man answered, voice clipped, wary. "Hi, my name is Hannah. I am a nurse. Your mother, Sarah Carrington, has just collapsed outside of a bakery on 86th and Columbus. I performed basic first aid and called an ambulance. She is stable but weak. Please come if you can." "I am on my way," he said, already moving. The line went dead. Less than 10 minutes later, a tall man in a charcoal gray overcoat appeared, weaving urgently through the crowd. His hair was dark, just tousled enough to suggest he had been running. His face was sharp, serious, someone used to responsibility. That was Ethan Carrington. He saw the figure on the sidewalk and stopped short. "Mom?" he breathed, then hurried forward and dropped to his knees beside her. Her eyes were fluttering now, struggling to focus. "Ethan," she whispered hoarsely. He gripped her hand. "I am here. You are okay now." Hannah stepped back, breathing hard, cheeks flushed from the cold and effort. Sarah's gaze drifted to her, and her lips quirked into the barest smile. She reached toward Hannah, fingers weak but insistent. "Angel," she murmured. "Thank you for not walking away." Hannah knelt again, brushing a stray lock of hair from the older woman's forehead. "I just did what anyone should," she said softly. Ethan looked up at her then, really looked. The nurse, the steady hands, the white ribbon in her hair. He had passed hundreds of people today, but none of them looked like her. The ambulance sirens approached. Hannah stood to help the paramedics lift the stretcher. Sarah's hand did not let go until the last possible moment. As the back doors closed, Ethan turned to the young woman. "Wait, what is your name?" Hannah paused, gave him a small smile, and shook her head. Then she walked away. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffle of nurses passing in the hallway. Sarah Carrington lay propped against a set of white pillows, her complexion improved but still pale. A thin oxygen tube ran beneath her nose. The IV drip ticked calmly beside her. Ethan sat nearby in the corner, coat folded neatly on his lap, long legs crossed, trying not to look worried, but failing. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant, his business partner, a client in Tokyo. He ignored them all. Sarah turned her head slightly and looked at her son. "You do not need to babysit me." "I'm not," Ethan said. "I'm making sure the best care money can buy doesn't let you fall on your face again." But Sarah did not laugh. She looked toward the door, distracted. "Has she come by?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" "The young woman, the nurse, the one with the ribbon in her hair." Ethan blinked. "I thought you didn't remember anything." "Oh, I remember her," Sarah murmured. "People like that, they leave a mark." Downstairs, in the nurse's station, Hannah finished entering patient charts into the system. She had stayed a few extra hours past her shift to help with the sudden overflow of cardiac cases. Her shoulders ached, her eyes stung, but there was something about being useful that made it all worth it. "Hannah." She turned. Ethan Carrington stood near the doorway, holding a small bouquet of calla lilies and a crisp white envelope. "I've been looking for you," he said. Hannah straightened her posture instinctively. "Is your mother all right?" "She is, thanks to you." He stepped forward and offered the bouquet. "These are for you. And this?" He held up the envelope. "Just a small thank you." She looked at both and shook her head, polite but firm. "That's not necessary." "It is. I was just doing my job, Mr. Carrington." His brow lifted slightly. "And you do it well." "I'm trained to help. I would have done the same for anyone." Ethan paused, then withdrew the envelope and placed the flowers on the counter. "Then at least let me say thank you for not walking away when others did." Hannah gave a faint smile. "Some things you don't walk away from." He nodded, studying her for a beat too long. "My mother keeps asking about you. She's very kind. She's very persistent." That made her laugh quietly. Moments later, Hannah was asked to take Sarah's vitals again. She walked into the room carefully, clipboard in hand, trying not to make eye contact. Sarah was awake, alert, and watching her like a hawk. "You came back," Sarah said softly. "I'm just here to take your blood pressure, Mrs. Carrington." "Oh, please, call me Sarah." Hannah gave a tight smile and reached for the cuff. As she secured it around the older woman's arm, Sarah suddenly reached for her hand. "You remind me of someone," she said, her voice thinner now, threaded with memory. "My sister, Abigail. She was a nurse too. Same light in the eyes, same quiet way of doing more than anyone asked." Hannah paused, unsure what to say. She used to come home with bruises from moving patients. Never complained. Always said, "They needed me. Just like you." The cuff beeped. Hannah released it gently and began to note the numbers. Sarah wasn't finished. "If my son had the sense to marry someone like you," she whispered, "I could go peacefully tomorrow." Hannah froze. Her face flushed a bright pink, and she almost dropped the pen. "Mrs. Carrington, Just then, the door opened. Ethan stepped in. He caught the tail end of the sentence, saw Hannah's startled expression, and his mother's faint, knowing smile. "Did I interrupt something?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "No," Hannah said quickly, stepping back. "Vitals are stable. I'll update the chart." She turned to leave, head ducked, cheeks still burning. Ethan watched her go, then turned to his mother. Sarah sighed. "I like her." He glanced back toward the door. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "Yeah, me too." The rain had come down steadily since late afternoon, turning the streets of Manhattan into slick ribbons of gray. Streetlights flickered against puddles, casting soft golden reflections across the asphalt. Hannah stood under the awning of a closed pharmacy, holding her phone like a lifeline. The battery was down to 5%. Her car, parked half a block behind her, sat silent, having stubbornly refused to start. She had tried calling roadside assistance, but the line was busy. Her jacket, still damp from walking out of the hospital, clung to her shoulders. The cold seeped in, quiet and stubborn. She hugged herself, shivering. A pair of headlights cut through the mist. A sleek black SUV rolled to a gentle stop in front of her. For a second, Hannah stepped back, unsure. Then the window lowered. "Hannah." She blinked. Ethan Carrington leaned across the passenger seat, looking puzzled and concerned. "I thought that was you," he said. "You okay?" "Car won't start," she said, her voice a little hoarse. "And my phone's about to die." Without another word, Ethan stepped out of the car, opened an umbrella, and walked around to her side. He opened the passenger door and gestured toward it. "Come on. Let me at least get you somewhere dry." She hesitated only a second, then nodded and climbed in. The warmth inside the SUV wrapped around her like a blanket. It smelled faintly of cedar and leather. Ethan slid back into the driver's seat, handed her a napkin from the glove box. She dabbed her cheeks and hair, then laughed, embarrassed. "Great first impression. You saved my mother's life. I think you've earned a few soaked-through moments." As he pulled away from the curb, the city blurred past the rain-slick windows. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Hannah broke the silence. "I always wanted to be a nurse," she said quietly. "Even when I was a kid." Ethan glanced over. "Really?" "My grandma raised me. She had chronic heart failure. I used to go with her to every appointment. I was maybe 8 when I told her I wanted to be the one helping, not just sitting in the waiting room." He didn't speak, but he listened. There was a gravity to his silence, a way he gave space to her words that made her feel seen. She continued, "People think it's a hard job, and it is. Long hours, low pay, not glamorous. But I get to make a difference, even if it's small. That means something to me." Ethan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "That's rare." "What is?" "Knowing what you want, knowing who you are. Most people spend their whole lives running from that." She looked at him. "And you? Did you always want to design buildings?" He gave a half smile. "I think I wanted to build homes, not buildings. Places people could feel safe in. Growing up, my house was beautiful, but it was never warm." Hannah looked down, digesting that. "It is strange, isn't it?" she said softly. "You can have all the things that look right on paper and still feel like something's missing." They pulled up outside her apartment building. The rain had softened, now a gentle mist more than a storm. She unbuckled her seatbelt, then paused. "Thank you for stopping." "Of course," Ethan said. "I'm just glad I saw you." As she reached for the door handle, he leaned over and handed her a small, square box wrapped in plain brown paper. She looked at it, surprised. "What's this?" "Something I picked up this morning. I was going to leave it at the nurse's station, but—" He shrugged. She opened it slowly. Inside was a compact folding umbrella, navy blue, with a pale gold interior. Tucked into the box was a small card, handwritten in careful script. "Wherever you go, always carry a little warmth." Her throat tightened. She looked at him, but the words would not come. "Good night, Hannah," he said gently. She nodded, stepping out into the misty evening, clutching the umbrella. As the SUV pulled away, she looked down at the note again. For the first time in weeks, she felt something shift inside her. A fragile, quiet warmth blooming in the cold. The hospital cafeteria buzzed with its usual rhythm, the hum of fluorescent lights, trays clattering, and the muted conversations of nurses between shifts. Outside, the sky was shifting from gray to gold, the last light of day brushing against the high windows of St. Augustine Medical Center. Hannah adjusted her scrubs and pushed open the swinging doors into the corridor. It had been a long shift. One patient had a seizure, another coded, and was stabilized after 20 minutes of chest compressions. Her shoulders ached. Her throat was dry. but she was used to this kind of tired. It was the kind that made her feel like she had done something that mattered. As she turned the corner toward the nurse's station, she nearly collided with someone. Ethan Carrington stood there, holding a small bouquet of white camellias, the kind that somehow looked elegant without trying. He was dressed in a slate gray wool coat, the collar turned up slightly. He smiled when he saw her. "Hi." Hannah blinked. "Hi. Are you, visiting your mother again?" "I am," he said. Then, after a pause, "But I was also hoping you'd be here." She smiled politely, but her eyes lowered. "Well, you found me." He handed her the flowers. "These are for you, not for her." She hesitated before accepting them. "You really do not need to keep thanking me. Maybe I just like finding reasons to talk to you." His voice was calm, but there was something honest about it, something careful. Before Hannah could reply, a sharp voice rang out down the hall. "Excuse me, nurse." A middle-aged man in a navy suit stormed up, his face red with agitation. Hannah turned instinctively and walked toward him, clutching the flowers in one hand. "Yes, sir? I have been waiting 20 minutes for someone to check on my mother," he barked. "She's 90, she's diabetic, and she said no one came when she rang the call button. What do you people even do around here?" Hannah kept her posture steady. "Sir, I apologize. I'll check on her right away. But please understand." "Understand what? That you're overpaid babysitters in scrubs?" the man snapped. "You think putting on white makes you saints? You're just glorified servants." The hallway went silent. From behind her, footsteps approached. Ethan's voice was low but unmistakable. "She is the reason my mother is alive today." The man turned, startled. Ethan continued, "You don't have to respect the scrubs, but you should respect the heart that wears them." The man blinked, flustered, and muttered something under his breath before turning and walking away, clearly not wanting to challenge Ethan any further. Hannah stood frozen for a moment. No one had ever done that for her before. When she finally turned around, Ethan was watching her, his jaw still tight from the adrenaline of the moment. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly, the tension in her chest softening. "I am now." He glanced at his watch, then back at her. "Have you eaten anything since today?" She gave a tired laugh. "A granola bar." "Then let me take you to dinner. Just dinner. No flowers, no thank you speeches. Just food, and maybe some conversation." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the station, then back to him. Her shift was nearly over. The idea of sitting down, even for a moment, sounded like heaven. "Okay," she said, "but only if it's someplace without white tablecloths." He smiled, a real one, not the polite kind. "Deal." That night, they sat in a quiet diner on the Upper West Side, sharing pancakes and tea under warm yellow lights. Hannah talked about the patients who made her laugh, the ones who broke her heart. Ethan shared stories about building homes for people who had lost everything. It was not a date, not exactly, but the way he listened, the way her smile stayed just a bit longer, and the way their eyes kept finding each other across the table. It felt like the beginning of something. The days began to fold into each other, marked by quiet glances, unspoken words, and a growing awareness that neither of them quite knew how to name. Hannah had started noticing things, how she felt lighter on days she saw Ethan, how she listened differently when he spoke, how his presence no longer startled her, but calmed her. That was the part that scared her most. She switched to more night shifts, claiming she preferred the quiet, but in truth, she was pulling away, creating space, distance, something she could control. Ethan noticed. Of course he did, but he said nothing. Instead, he waited. One afternoon, Hannah received a call. It was Sarah Carrington, warm and direct as always. "I was hoping you'd come to dinner. Just a small thank you. No excuses." Hannah hesitated, unsure. But she could not refuse the woman who once called her an angel with her last breath. That evening, Hannah arrived at the Carrington home, dressed simply, heart quietly thudding. The door opened before she could knock, and there stood Ethan. Their eyes met. He did not speak, just smiled and stepped aside. Inside, the air was cozy with the scent of roasted vegetables and the crackle of a fireplace. Sarah welcomed her like family and chatted through dinner with a kind of ease Hannah hadn't felt in a long time. At one point, Sarah shared a story that made Hannah laugh. When Ethan was 7, he built a cardboard house for his little sister's dolls. He even made a skylight out of a juice carton. Ethan groaned softly. It had a working door, Sarah added proudly. Hannah's laughter came naturally. Something in her chest loosened. After dinner, Ethan offered to drive her home. She hesitated, then agreed. The car ride was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Rain tapped against the windshield as city lights blurred past. Hannah leaned back, the weariness of her double shift pulling at her eyelids. She tried to speak, to ask something, but her voice gave way to a small yawn. Ethan glanced over. She had fallen asleep. Her head rested gently against the window, blonde hair loose from the ribbon that still clung to a low ponytail. Her breathing was soft, even. The chaos of the world seemed far away. Ethan turned down the volume on the radio. He reached quietly behind his seat, pulled his coat over, and laid it across her lap. He did not touch her. He did not speak. He only drove slower, wishing the drive would stretch a little longer, just a few more blocks of this stillness, of her, resting. When they reached her apartment, Hannah stirred awake, blinking fast. "I am so sorry," she mumbled, cheeks flushed. Ethan smiled. "No need. This car was designed to be restful." Before she could open the door, he handed her a folded piece of paper. "Open it when you are tired," he said simply. Hannah took it, puzzled but nodded. Back inside, with the quiet around her, she opened the paper. It was a floor plan, a redesign of the nurse's break room at her hospital. The sketch was clean, thoughtful, with space for rest, light, and even music. In the corner, scribbled in small handwriting, were 7 words. "Those who care deserve care too." Hannah stared at it for a long time. She had received flowers before, chocolates, words of appreciation, but no one had ever looked at her life and quietly asked what she might need. She placed the drawing gently on her nightstand. The warmth in her chest was not loud. It did not come with fireworks or confessions. It came from one thoughtful sketch and the man who drew it, and something inside her, something long buried under long hours and patient charts, began to turn toward the light. The hospital hallway was quiet that afternoon. Hannah sat in the break room, sipping from a paper cup, eyes tired but calm. A fellow nurse, Carla, joined her. They had worked a few shifts together recently and talked more as the days went by. "You've been close with Mrs. Carrington, haven't you?" Carla asked, stirring her coffee. "She's sweet. I remember when she was in the private recovery unit at East Shore a few years back." Hannah blinked. "Really? I didn't know she was there." "Oh yeah, it was a long stay. Complications after surgery. The staff loved her, but—" Carla hesitated. "They used to whisper about her son. Apparently he was overseas, building some huge thing in Dubai. Didn't come back for almost 2 years." Hannah's stomach tightened. "You mean Ethan?" "Yeah," Carla said. "Big shot architect, right? Everyone thought he would move heaven and earth for her, but she was mostly alone. It was kind of sad." The words stayed with Hannah long after Carla left. That evening, rain was falling again. The city blurred through the hospital windows. Hannah stood by the exit, watching the headlights on the wet pavement, her thoughts a mess of emotion. All this time, she had seen Ethan as someone different, someone who showed up, who listened, who protected. But the picture was changing, and it unsettled her. Later that week, they crossed paths again. Not by accident. Ethan had stopped by to visit his mother, and Hannah was leaving her shift. "Can I walk you to the gate?" he asked. She nodded, but her eyes were distant. They walked side by side in silence, the night air thick between them. Finally, Hannah stopped under the awning near the staff entrance. Her voice was soft, but steady. "Why didn't you come home when your mother was sick?" Ethan froze. "I found out," she added, eyes on his. "She was in the hospital for a long time, and you were on another continent." His face didn't shift. He didn't look away. "I was working," he said quietly, "running from a lot of things. I told myself I was doing it for her, for the future. But the truth is, I could not face how fragile she had become." Hannah's voice broke slightly. "You saved me in front of a crowd, but she needed you in silence, and you weren't there." Ethan exhaled, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You're right," he said. "I was not. I failed her, and that guilt doesn't go away, but I am trying now, not just to make up for it, but to be better, and I am learning how because of you." There was no defense in his voice, no excuses, just a quiet admission of pain. Hannah's chest ached, not with anger, but with something deeper. She had seen so many kinds of strength in the hospital. The ones who fought, the ones who endured, and the ones who broke and still tried again. Ethan was trying. She did not reply, but when he gently reached to adjust the strap of her bag that had slipped from her shoulder, she did not pull away. She walked the rest of the way without another word, but her pace matched his, not ahead, not behind, just beside. The event was held in a bright, open gallery space in Brooklyn. Architectural renderings hung from sleek easels, sunlight slanting across floor-to-ceiling windows. Beneath them, models in white and pale wood showed a community of gentle curves and gardens, sunlight and simplicity. The project was titled Hearthwell. Guests from the city's design and medical communities filled the room. Reporters whispered, intrigued by the sudden pivot from one of New York's most high-profile architects. But Ethan Carrington stood calmly at the front, dressed not in a designer suit, but in a simple gray blazer, sleeves slightly rolled. He did not need to command the room. The room was already listening. He clicked to the first slide. It was not a floor plan or elevation. It was a photograph of an elderly woman seated by a window, a nurse beside her, laughing. It was not staged. It was real. "This is not a facility," Ethan said. "It is a home, a place where people can age with dignity, with light, with music, with people who care not because they are paid to, but because it is who they are." He paused, looked out at the crowd, then added, his voice quieting just enough for the microphones to lean in. "I learned that from a nurse, one who did not know my name, who knelt on a freezing sidewalk to save a stranger, who treats every patient with the same care she gives her own family, who reminded me that care is not a duty, it is a gift." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hannah, standing near the back, frozen in place, felt her pulse in her throat. She had not expected to be mentioned. She had only come because Sarah had insisted, gently but firmly. Ethan did not say her name. He did not need to. When the event ended and the guests moved to the wine table, Ethan found her by the exit. Her coat was folded neatly over her arm, and her ribbon was tied a little looser than usual. "I thought you were avoiding public speeches," she said, attempting a smile. He chuckled softly. "I still am." That was not a speech. That was the truth. They stood there for a moment, people passing around them like gentle currents. For the first time, Hannah did not feel out of place among Ethan's world. "I wanted to build homes that mattered," Ethan said, "but I forgot the most important part." "What's that?" "Who you want in them." He extended his hand. "No promises, no perfect plans, just this: come with me. Not because of who I am or what I do, but because I want to build something with you. Not out of bricks, out of something real." Her fingers hovered for half a second. Then she took his hand. And the gallery, for all its light and glass, felt suddenly very small compared to the warmth between two people who had finally stopped running from their own hearts. A year later, the city was a distant hum. Ethan and Hannah lived in a modest house on the edge of a quiet town, where trees arched gently over sidewalks and neighbors waved from porches. It wasn't grand, but it was beautiful in the way things are when they're made with care. Ethan had designed it himself. There was a wraparound porch with a swing, a small garden Hannah tended on weekends, a window seat where sunlight gathered in the afternoons. The house creaked in the wind, but it never felt lonely. Inside, life moved gently. Hannah still worked at the hospital. Her name now passed between patients like a trusted story. She preferred the night shifts. There was something sacred, she said, about keeping someone safe while the world slept. Ethan had stepped back from big competitions. He still designed, but focused on smaller projects, clinics, libraries, homes for families who'd never dreamed of having one. He said he liked watching people walk into something that once only lived in his mind. Most mornings, they drank coffee on the porch, Hannah in scrubs, Ethan barefoot, a sketchbook in his lap. Sarah Carrington, now stronger and sharper, no longer needed daily care. Ethan still visited her almost every day, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to listen. They argued now and then, but never about the important things. She spent her afternoons painting in the backyard, flowers, birds, and often a little girl named Ava. Ava, their next-door neighbor, was 5 years old and endlessly curious. Always in a pink dress, hair in braided pigtails, she had dubbed Hannah her big sister after a Hello Kitty bandage healed a scraped knee. She came over nearly every day to bake cookies, paint beside Sarah, or simply sit and ask very serious questions about the moon. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full. One Thursday, Hannah came home from work to find a box on the kitchen counter. Inside was a rolled blueprint, tied with a soft white ribbon, the same kind she still wore in her hair. She unrolled it. It showed a house slightly larger than theirs, more windows, a room labeled Guest or Someday Kid. A small studio marked Dreams in Progress, and in the center of it all, 2 handwritten words, Home, as long as you're in it. She held it to her chest, overwhelmed by something soft and wordless. That evening, Hannah, Ethan, and Sarah sat on the porch as the sun fell in golden ribbons across the lawn. Ava danced barefoot through the yard, wearing a paper crown she had made for Sarah, who wore it like it was royal. The breeze lifted Hannah's hair, catching the white ribbon tied neatly at the back, the same one she'd worn in Manhattan the morning she knelt beside a stranger. Now, it was simply part of her. Ethan reached for her hand, a silent gesture. She laced her fingers with his. And in that quiet space, between laughter, wind, and sunlight, Hannah smiled. Because sometimes, you don't need a blueprint to build something lasting. You just need to start with one open door, one act of care, and one person who stays. If this story moved something in you, a reminder that love can be quiet and kindness life-changing, then you're in the right place. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we tell tales that warm the heart and honor compassion, where nurses heal more than wounds, and strangers become family. If you felt even a flicker of hope, tap that hype button, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes in gentle strength and lasting care. More stories are coming, the kind that whisper truth and linger long after. Until then, stay kind, stay curious, and keep believing in the quiet good.